So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, the Detroit Lions are 2-0 in their last two football contests and are 2-2 since the Week 6 bye. They look like a very different team from what we saw in the first month of NFL play, and the Lions are starting to go from a team that is the worst defense in NFL history and cannot win a close game to save their lives to a team that over the past 2 weeks has made incredible defensive stands at the end of the game and at very clutch situations, and have then won two extremely close and tight divisional matchups to improve their record from 1-6 just 2 weeks ago to 3-6 on this day. So today we're going to take a look at this offense, we're going to take a look at this defense, and we're going to take an overall look at the team to see what has changed. What about this roster, what about this football team has changed significantly, and why are the Detroit Lions seeming to play better football and play like a better football team now versus a few weeks/months ago. So starting off with the injuries, right? About a month ago, right, going back to week 6, week 7, the Lions were easily one of the most injury-riddled teams in the NFL. They consistently had 10 to 14 players on their injury report every single week and had easily 10 plus players questionable, doubtful, or out completely from every single contest. Now, these outs and these injuries included major injuries to John Cominsky, a starting pass rusher for the Detroit Lions that has generated a ton of interior pressure for the line. It includes guys like Josh Paschal, the second-round pick, who since becoming healthy has been a huge impact player on the defensive line, as well as Charles Harris, as well as Amani Oruwariye. Really, any major member of the Detroit Lions up to this point, not named Jared Goff or Penei Sewell, has experienced some kind of significant injury and really has not been able to play every single game at their best this season. But this injury-riddled season was really at its peak in weeks 4 to week 7, right, where there was consistently 7-8 guys out every single game, including 3 to 4 pass rushers, including 2 to 3 secondary members, including 3 to 4 wide receivers up to this point. And even though the Lions aren't 100% healthy, right, they still have injury concerns at wide receiver, they still have depth concerns in certain places on this roster. They are healthier. Josh Paschal is back playing. John Cominsky is back playing. Charles Harris is playing and rushing the passer. They are getting their defensive players back, which is a big reason as to why the Lions defense has not necessarily been a top defense over the past couple of weeks, but has gotten more of these clutch stops, has made some more plays, have forced some more turnovers and forced more punts because they're starting to get healthy, and getting healthy leads directly into another thing we've talked about in the past, that being Aaron Glenn's play calling, right? We really criticized Aaron Glenn early in the season for the way he was calling football games, for calling zero blitz when it wasn't necessary, for sending 7-8 guys around the line of scrimmage when you just didn't need to do it, right? It was a high risk, high reward type of play, and the Lions were getting more of that risk factor and getting bit by it than actually being helped by it. But we talked about how that was a big factor of the injury concerns, right? When your front four cannot generate pressure because 3 of your starting pass rushers are injured, it's going to be really hard, and you're going to have to compensate with blitzing linebackers, with blitzing safeties, and hanging your cornerbacks out to dry. Well, now that the Lions are healthy and now that their front seven is actually kind of a cohesive unit that takes the field every once in a while together, they look like a better defense. Their front four gets pressure, not necessarily at a super, elite rate in the NFL, but they are a pretty good pass rush, right? The combination of Aiden Hutchinson, Julian Okwara, John Kaminsky, Josh Paschal, and Charles Harris has been a pretty good, dynamic pass rushing group, and once Romeo Okwara returns to the active roster, assuming he returns to the form he was at in 2020 and 2021, the Lions pass rush will get even better with another rotational piece and another piece to add and throw at the quarterback, leaving one more player to drop back into coverage and be a covering defender, right? When you have less players that you have to send towards the line of scrimmage, you have more opportunity to drop players back, more opportunities to disguise certain coverages, and just have more people around the football down the field. Now that his pass rush is actually getting pressure, now that Aiden Hutchinson and Charles Harris and Julian Okwara and John Kaminsky and Josh Paschal are getting to the quarterback, which is 4 to 5 man fronts, Aaron Glenn can afford to drop 7, 8 players into coverage. He can afford to have 4 cornerbacks in coverage. He can afford to drop those linebackers. He can afford to have the safeties play deeper because the pass rush is finally getting home. And this is what we've talked about in the past, right? Once the Lions got healthy, the pass rush would improve with just 4. Once the pass rush improved with 4, then you could drop more players into coverage and actually call a defense that you want to call, and a defense that can work. And we're starting to see that defense come together in Detroit. And I think that's the biggest reason as to why the Lions are starting to win football games, right? As much as a lot of people want to say, oh, you can't be reliant on health, oh, you can't use health as an excuse as to why you're losing football games, at the end of the day, if you're playing without a majority of your starting roster, it's going to be hard to win the NFL. If you're rushing the passer with 3 run stoppers because that's all the guys that are healthy and 1 pass rusher, it's going to be really hard for that pass rusher to get home because he's going to be the focal point of the offense and he's going to be stopped more than anybody else, right? When these defensive linemen were out, it was Ali McNeil, Isaiah Buggs, and Austin Bryant rushing the passer. Those are run stoppers. Those are not pass rushers. Those are not guys that are going to get sacks. Aiden Hutchinson has been the only consistently healthy pass rusher for the Lions all year, and he's shown that through his production. But once we got some pass rushers back, once Josh Paschal rushed from the other side, once Harris got healthy and started rushing from the other side, once Paschal and Kaminsky started rushing in the interior, Aiden Hutchinson has looked better. He's looked more productive, and he looks like a better football player when he isn't the sole focus of the offense. Now, I won't say that it was 100% health because I think the Lions have made quite a few improvements in other areas as well, but not to the degree of overall health, right? The Lions are getting healthy. When the Lions get healthy and when that pass rush is on, Aaron Glenn can go into his bag of tricks. He can call different coverages. He can call different things to confuse the quarterbacks. And when your front 7 and when your front 4 is getting pressure on the quarterback, your team and your defense is automatically going to get a boost and look better. Now, other contributing factors to this Detroit Lions turnaround, and a lot of contributing factors to the kind of, change in philosophy from losing close games to winning close games, does come from, first off, I think that the Lions coaching staff has improved. I think Aaron Glenn is getting better as a defensive coordinator once his pieces returned. And I think Dan Campbell is becoming better at game management situations. I think he's becoming less aggressive when it's unnecessary. I think he is, calling games a little bit better as far as clock management and getting the clock to where they want to be. I think he's using timeouts and challenges properly up to this point. Dan Campbell has improved quite a bit in his game management skills since week 1 and really since the first couple of games of the season. He has improved a lot in that particular spot of coaching, and I don't think he's getting the credit he deserves because the Lions haven't started winning until very recently. But really since the bye week, I think Dan Campbell has been much, much better when it comes to being over-aggressive, when it comes to using timeouts, when it comes to the game management side of football. Dan Campbell over the last month has improved dramatically and very, very drastically, and he's not getting the credit he deserves. On top of that, I think that overall player development development is playing a role. Now that Hutchinson is getting some reps, now that Okudah is looking like he should, now that, Rodriguez and Barnes are developing, right? There are some pieces coming together on this team, but it took a few weeks for these pieces to get up to speed. It took a few weeks for this group to play as a group, and I think that is another small piece of it. But I think another major part of this turnaround for the Lions is they're simply playing to their schedule, right? The Lions very early in the season played a lot of playoff contenders. They played the Eagles in week 1. They played the Commanders in week 2, who are 4-5 and may get back to 5-5 tonight on Monday Night Football. They played the Minnesota Vikings, who are now 8-1. They've played the New England Patriots, who are 5-4. They've played the Seahawks, who are leading the NFC West. They played Miami, who's a playoff contender. They played Dallas, who's a playoff contender. They played a lot of teams that are going to be playing in January. They played a lot of teams that may have a chance to go on in February and play for the Super Bowl. But the last 2 weeks, they've played 3-6, I guess now 4-6 Green Bay, and won. And then they've played now 3-7 Chicago, and they have won. Every single time the Lions have played a football team this year that currently has a losing record halfway through the season, they have been victorious. And their losses include 3 points to an undefeated Eagles team, 4 points to an 8-1 Minnesota team, comes to a, really, really strong finish or a really close game, a 4-point loss to a really strong Miami team in the AFC, right? They have had so many close games. A 3-point loss to the NFC West champions up to this point in the Seattle Seahawks, right? They haven't had a break. They haven't had a quote-unquote easy game since the Washington Commanders, but when those games come around, and right now, when the Lions are getting games they should be winning, they're winning. They are getting the job done against the teams that aren't very good, and that is the first step to building a winning culture in Detroit. Right? We're not expecting the Lions to be playoff contenders, which is why I don't understand why everybody was freaking out at the beginning of the season. They played back-to-back playoff contenders all the way from the Eagles down to Miami. All of those teams have a potential chance to make the playoffs at this point, and as of right now, every single team on the Lions schedule has an opportunity to still make the playoffs, and the only team that is more than one game under 500 is Chicago and Green Bay, both of which Detroit beat. So I think it's a combination of health, getting healthy, improving coaching staff, this team and coaching staff growing together as a unit, and overall, the Lions just taking advantage of this stretch of their schedule and really starting to stack a few wins and build some confidence together as they grow and take on some of the weaker teams in the NFC. So, with all that being said, that is all for you guys today. Why do you think the Lions have turned it around recently? Let me know down in the comments below what you think the biggest change the Lions have made and why over the past 2 weeks they are 2-0, whereas before they started 1-6. I'd be very curious what you guys think. Well, all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!